My name is Judith Wright, and I've called the same two-story colonial in a leafy suburb of Fort Wayne, Indiana, my home for nearly 53 years. It's a house built of brick and memories, the place my late husband Stanley and I chose to lay down our roots when the world felt boundless and new. Stanley was an electrical engineer for Magnavox, a man of quiet precision and boundless curiosity. His mind worked like a schematic, finding logic and order in everything. He was the one who taught me, long before it was fashionable, that the future wasn't something to be feared, but a puzzle to be solved. He brought home our first computer in 1994, a Packard Bell that hummed with the sound of progress. While my friends on the Bridge Club were still writing checks and licking stamps, Stanley had me logged into Prodigy, exploring the nascent internet. "Jude," he'd say, tapping the monitor, "this is the new library, the new post office, and the new town square. Never let anyone convince you you're too old to hold a key to it." Stanley passed from a sudden heart attack 7 years ago, but his voice, that calm, encouraging baritone, still echoes in these quiet rooms. My life now is one of structured peace. I manage my portfolio online, I tend to the hydrangeas he planted, and I keep in touch with my family. My only grandson, Cody Scott, is my daughter's son. At 22, he possesses his father's easy charm, but, I've come to realize, he wields it with a disconcerting sense of purpose. He carries an air of weary patience, as if every visit to his grandmother's house is a charitable act for which he deserves a medal. He stopped by last month, his smile a little too bright, holding a sleek white box like a trophy. "Graham," he began, his voice a carefully calibrated blend of affection and condescension, "we need to talk about this old phone of yours. It's practically a fossil. You can't even get the latest security updates. I was so worried about you being hacked that I went ahead and got you a new one. On me." He placed the box on my polished mahogany dining table with a theatrical flourish. I knew perfectly well my current phone, an iPhone from just 2 years ago, was secure and functioning flawlessly. I had automatic updates enabled. But I saw something in Cody's eyes. A flicker of hungry anticipation, a hidden agenda peeking from behind the curtain of his feigned concern. I decided in that moment to step into the role he had written for me. I smiled, a gentle, slightly bewildered grandmotherly smile. "Oh, Cody, honey, that's so very sweet of you. But I'm all thumbs with these new gadgets. I'm afraid I'll just break it." I watched him preen, puffing up with self-importance. It's a performance I've honed over the decades. People are astonishingly candid when they believe you're too simple to grasp their true intentions. He spent the better part of an hour setting it up for me, his thumbs a blur across the glass screen he'd just liberated from its plastic wrap. "See, Graham, it's not so bad. I made the icons huge for you. It's all very intuitive." I watched him work, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Stanley always said to trust my instincts, and my instincts were screaming that this gesture wasn't about protecting me. It was about controlling my access, about creating an environment he could manipulate. He was laying the foundation for something, brick by duplicitous brick, and I resolved to let him build his flimsy structure. I would be the clueless old lady in the house he thought he was about to own. A week later, just as I predicted, Cody was back. He settled himself at my kitchen table, the very table where Stanley and I mapped out our retirement, and accepted a glass of iced tea with a somber nod. He had a look of deep, manufactured worry on his face, a frown line rehearsed in the car on the way over. He took a long, slow sip before speaking. "Graham, I've been doing a lot of thinking since last week," he said, leaning forward and lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We got you the new phone, which is great, a huge step. But we overlooked the biggest vulnerability of all." He paused for dramatic effect. "Your banking. I saw the Citibank app on your old phone. Graham, their standard app it's like putting a screen door on a bank vault. The pros, the real hackers, can get through that in their sleep." He shook his head sadly. I had to suppress a smile. I am, in fact, a Citibank private client, a service Stanley set me up with years ago. My app is a dedicated platform with enhanced security features, and I use a biometric login coupled with a 2-factor authentication system that texts a 6-digit code to my phone for any significant transaction or new login attempt. It was far more secure than Cody's student checking account, I was certain. But he was operating on the assumption that my technical knowledge was frozen somewhere around 1998. I played along, widening my eyes and placing a hand on my chest in a gesture of alarm. Oh my goodness! Hackers? You mean they could just take my money? All of it? In a heartbeat, Graham. And it's not right, he said, his voice brimming with false indignation. You and Grandpa Stan worked your whole lives for that money. It's your security. But don't you worry, because I found the solution. He slid his own phone across the table, showing me a slick dark blue icon with a stylized V and a lock symbol. This is a new financial security platform called Vault Sync. It's what all the tech guys are using now. It's an aggregator that links all your accounts under a single military-grade encryption key. Think of it like a digital Fort Knox. Once we move your banking information into this system, no one can touch it. I had, of course, never heard of Vault Sync, and a 5-second search on my laptop later that evening would reveal it was a flimsy data harvesting app with terrible reviews and a privacy policy written by wolves. The scam was taking its final ugly shape. He wasn't building a fortress for me. He was building a secret passage for himself. I squinted at the phone, feigning confusion. Vault Sync? What's an aggregator? I asked, playing the part he so desperately needed me to embody. He let out a soft, patronizing chuckle. No, Graham. Aggregator. It aggregates, it gathers things. It's for your own good. We just need to connect your main Citibank account to it, and then you'll be totally protected. We'll make it our little secret project, okay? Just you and me. No need to worry anyone else. Our little secret. The words dripped with poison. He wanted this done quietly, away from the potential scrutiny of his mother, my daughter. This was the confirmation I needed. He was after the nest egg, the legacy Stanley and I had so carefully constructed. A wave of profound sadness washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Fine, Cody, I thought to myself. Let's get to work on our little secret project. I am eager to see what you build. The following Saturday, Cody arrived with the solemnity of a visiting dignitary. He brought his laptop this time, setting it up on the dining table with an air of immense self-importance. All right, Graham. Today is the day we future-proof your finances, he announced, cracking his knuckles. I made a show of hovering anxiously over his shoulder, wringing my hands. Oh, I don't know, Cody. This all looks so terribly complicated. What if I touch the wrong thing and erase the internet? I asked, leaning into the caricature. He patted my arm condescendingly, his eyes fixed on the screen. Don't you worry about a thing, Graham. Your only job is to sit back and relax. I'll handle all the heavy lifting. For the next half hour, he put on a masterclass in obfuscation. He guided me through the download and installation of his Vault Sync application, using a baffling cocktail of technical jargon and overly simplified instructions. Okay, so we're just going to interface with the primary banking API. All you have to do is tap the big blue button, Graham. Perfect. Now, the app is generating a unique cryptographic handshake to authenticate your credentials. He made it sound as if we were launching a space shuttle, and I responded with what I hoped was a convincing performance of a woman both deeply impressed and utterly bewildered. Finally, we arrived at the endgame. The screen on my new phone displayed a simple login page under the Vault Sync's logo, asking for my Citibank username and password. This was the moment his entire plan hinged upon. Okay, Graham, this is the last most important step, he said, turning the phone to face me. His voice was low and serious. You just need to type in your username and password for your Citibank account right here. Once you do that, Vault Sync will create the secure link, and it's all done. Your money will be safe forever. I put on a final theatrical show of hesitation. My password? Oh dear. The man at the bank, Mr. Henderson. He always said you should never, ever share your password with anyone. This was his final hurdle, my last shred of feigned resistance. He leaned in closer, his face a mask of painstaking sincerity. And Mr. Henderson is right, Graham. You should never share it with a person. But this isn't a person. This is an encrypted, secure system. It's like putting your money in a new, stronger safe. And I'm right here with you. We're a team. This is the only way to protect you from the real criminals out there. Don't you trust me? The question hung in the air between us, a toxic cloud. I looked at this boy, my grandson, a child whose baby photos were still on my mantelpiece, and I felt a grief so profound it almost buckled my knees. He was using my love as his crowbar, but the grief receded, replaced by the cold, clear focus of a strategist. I let out a shaky, defeated sigh. Well, all right, Cody. If you're sure it's for the best. You're the expert here. My fingers, which he saw as gnarled and clumsy, trembled for effect as I slowly, deliberately typed in my username. Then, I entered the password. It was an old one, linked to a secondary savings account I hadn't actively used in years. For this very occasion, I had moved exactly $5,000 into it. My real wealth, my life savings, was held in a different set of accounts, protected by a 20-character alphanumeric password that Stanley himself would have admired. Cody watched my every move, a predatory glint of triumph in his eyes. Perfect, he breathed as the app displayed a spinning loading icon. That's it, Graham. You're all set. You are officially secure. With his mission accomplished, Cody packed up his laptop with the smug satisfaction of a conquering hero. He gave me a quick, almost fleeting hug, his mind clearly already on the spoils of his victory. I'll call you in a few days to check in, Graham, he called out as the front door clicked shut behind him. The sudden silence that filled the house was deafening. I stood motionless in the dining room, looking at the 2 iced tea glasses still sitting on the table, collecting condensation. For a moment, I allowed the grief to surface. It wasn't about the money. It was about the boy I had loved, the trust he had so casually incinerated for a pittance. He had looked me right in my eyes and lied, utterly convinced of his own intellectual superiority and my complete incompetence. But the grief was a hot, passing storm. It cleansed the air and left behind an Arctic calm. Stanley Wright did not raise a fool, and he certainly did not marry a victim. I sat down, picked up my new, secure smartphone, and bypassed the gaudy blue Vault Sync icon entirely. I opened my real Citibank private client app, the one he didn't know existed, and logged in with a quick scan of my face and my true password. Just as I anticipated, a bright red notification was waiting for me at the top of the screen. A funds transfer had been initiated from the Decoy savings account. The amount was precise, $5,000, the full balance. The transaction details showed it was being moved to an external checking account. My phone buzzed in my hand a second later. It was an automated text message, the very security feature Cody assumed I was too senile to understand. Citibank fraud alert. We have detected a transfer of $5,000 from your account ending in 3,451 to an account ending in 7,852. If you authorize this transaction, reply yes. If you did not, reply no. A thin, cold smile formed on my lips. This was the elegant digital tripwire he had blundered into. He saw a befuddled old woman. He failed to see the intricate web of security protocols I maintained with meticulous care. He thought his cheap little app was a master key, but all it did was sound every alarm I had personally set. My first impulse was to immediately text back no, to shut down the transfer and end his scheme before it even began. But where was the justice in that? He'd plead ignorance, claim it was a mistake. He wouldn't learn anything. The lesson required that he believe, unequivocally, that he had succeeded. He needed to feel the weight of that money in his account, to taste the sweetness of his perceived triumph. Only then, when he was at the peak of his arrogance, would I sever the rope. I set the phone down on the table. I would allow the transfer to complete. I would give him the weekend to get comfortable, to get cocky, to spend the money. I walked over to the bay window and looked out at Stanley's prize-winning rose bushes. He always said the sharpest thorns protect the most precious blooms. I decided then that I would be like my roses. I would let Cody think he could simply reach out and pluck what he desired. He was about to learn a very painful lesson about thorns. The subsequent days were a masterclass in controlled patience. I followed my daily routine with a placid exterior that belied the methodical observation taking place beneath the surface. I pruned the deadheads from my roses. I spent the afternoons reading historical biographies, and I watched the evening news with my customary cup of chamomile tea. To the outside world, I was the same Judith Wright I had always been, but I was also a predator, watching the trap I had laid. I had replied yes to the fraud alert, giving the transfer my official, albeit temporary, blessing. The $5.00 a day later, and I received a quiet confirmation from the bank that it had been successfully deposited into a checking account registered to one Cody A. Scott. His own name. The sheer audacity was almost comical. He was so certain of my ignorance that he didn't even bother to create a shell account or use an intermediary. He funneled the stolen money directly into his own pocket, leaving a digital trail as wide and clear as a highway. 2 days after the transfer cleared, he called me. His voice was a thick, sweet syrup of feigned concern. "Hey, Graham! Just calling to see how you're doing. How are you and that new superphone getting along? No problems, I hope?" I let out a weary sigh, a carefully rehearsed sound of elderly confusion. "Oh, it's all right, Cody dear. It's still a bit much for me. All those little pictures, they're so confusing. I think I might have accidentally deleted the icon for my photo album." I could practically hear the smug grin spreading across his face. "Don't you worry about that, Graham. I'll come over and fix it for you next week. The most important thing is that your finances are safe and sound now, right?" he said, his emphasis on the word safe, a private joke he thought only he was in on. The very next day, the true evidence of his hard work appeared. My daughter, Sarah, a woman who sees her son through the most rose-tinted glasses imaginable, posted a series of photos on her Facebook page. The main picture featured Cody standing proudly next to a gigantic, wall-mounted 8K television. The cardboard box it came in was propped against the wall behind him like a hunting trophy. Cody was beaming, a triumphant king in his small, messy apartment. Sarah's caption was bursting with maternal pride. "So proud of my amazing son, Cody. All that overtime he's been putting in at his job really paid off. He treated himself to this incredible new TV. You deserve it, sweetie." Overtime. I had to set my teacup down to keep from snorting into it. Cody's job was a 15-hour-a-week gig pouring lattes at a campus coffee shop. The only overtime he had been engaged in was the meticulous planning and execution of a felony against his own grandmother. I looked at the photograph, at his gleeful, self-satisfied face, and felt a profound, grim satisfaction. He was spending the evidence. He was flaunting his crime. He was creating an unassailable public record of his guilt, complete with a timestamp. He wasn't just arrogant, he was a fool. He had taken the bait, swallowed the hook, and was now parading the shiny lure for his entire social circle to admire. The trap was sprung. The evidence was secured. It was time to pull the line taut. I would grant him one final evening to enjoy his stolen entertainment. It was, after all, going to be the most expensive television he would ever even briefly own. On Thursday morning, after my usual walk around the block, I poured myself a strong cup of black coffee, sat at my dining table with a legal pad and a pen, and picked up my phone. The time for passive observation was over. It was time for action. I didn't bother with the 1-800 number on the back of my debit card. Instead, I dialed the direct line to the Citibank Private Client Fraud and Security Division, a number I kept written in Stanley's elegant script on a card in my desk drawer. A crisp, professional voice answered on the second ring. "Citibank Private Client Services, this is Brenda speaking. How may I assist you today?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. "Good morning, Brenda. My name is Judith Wright. My account number is 544. I am calling to report a targeted, fraudulent wire transfer executed against my account." I proceeded to lay out the entire sordid affair, not as a panicked senior, but as a clear-headed, meticulous witness. I provided the exact date and time of Cody's initial visit to set up my phone. I explained the pretext of the fraudulent VaultSync application. I gave her the precise date, time, and amount of the $5,000 transfer. Crucially, I provided her with the recipient's full name and account number, which I had carefully transcribed from my own banking records. Brenda was quiet on the other end of the line, the only sound the rapid, rhythmic clicking of her keyboard. After a long moment she spoke, her professional tone now tinged with a hint of disbelief. "Mrs. Wright, I am deeply sorry that you've been targeted like this. I want to confirm, the recipient of the funds, Cody Scott, is this a relative?" "He is my grandson, Brenda," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. He operated under the false assumption that I am technologically incompetent and emotionally frail. He exploited my trust to steal from me. I then took it a step further. I directed her to my daughter's public Facebook profile, providing the direct URL to the post with the photograph of Cody and his new television, purchased the day after my money had landed in his account. The television in that photograph, Brenda, is a Samsung Neo QLED, which retails for approximately $3,000. As I'm sure your records can confirm, my grandson works part-time at a coffee shop. I believe you are a woman of logic. The math is not difficult. The sound of typing on her end grew more furious. Mrs. Wright, the documentation you've provided it's extraordinarily thorough. You've built an airtight case here. Stanley always taught me that the best defense is a well-prepared offense, I said. Now, Brenda, this is what I need you to do. The $5,000 in my grandson's account is stolen property. It is my asset. I want you to place an immediate administrative freeze on his entire checking account, not just the stolen funds. Based on my understanding of federal banking regulations, specifically Section 314(b) of the Patriot Act, when illicit funds are commingled with legitimate assets in an account suspected of fraudulent activity, the entire account can be frozen. Pending a full investigation. Brenda was silent for a beat. Yes, ma'am, that is absolutely correct. We can and we will initiate that freeze immediately. We will place a hold on all assets in the account ending in 7,852 and launch a formal investigation. He will be unable to access any of the funds until this matter is fully resolved. A grim, resolute smile touched my lips. Excellent. That is precisely the outcome I was hoping for. Thank you for your efficient assistance, Brenda. I ended the call and took another long sip of coffee. The wheels of consequence were now turning, and Cody's brief, blissful period as a man of means was about to come to a sudden, screeching, and deeply humiliating halt. The inevitable phone call came just under 24 hours later. I was on my knees in the garden, wearing Stanley's old gardening gloves, gently tending to my azaleas, when my phone, tucked into the pocket of my apron, began to vibrate. The screen glowed with the name Cody. I carefully took off one glove, brushed the rich Indiana soil from my fingers, took a calming breath, and answered with the most serene, grandmotherly voice I could muster. Hello, Cody, dear. Is everything all right? The sound that erupted from the other end of the line was not the smooth, condescending baritone of my grandson. It was a panicked, high-pitched shriek laced with pure terror. Graham! Graham! Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong with my bank card. It's not working. I was trying to buy groceries and it was declined. I tried the ATM and it ate my card. I checked my banking app and it says my account is frozen. It says it's under a fraud investigation. What the hell is going on? Did you get hacked? Is it those hackers I warned you about? Did they steal your money and somehow it got linked to me? The irony was so rich, so deliciously thick, I almost laughed. He was desperately trying to pin his downfall on the very phantoms he had conjured to perpetrate his crime. It was time to pull back the curtain. I let a long, heavy silence stretch between us before I spoke, my voice as cool and calm as the steel of a surgeon's scalpel. Is that so, Cody? Your account is frozen, you say? That does sound very serious. Serious? Of course it's serious. My rent is due. My car payment? I have no money. The bank won't tell me anything. They just keep repeating the words fraudulent activity. Did someone get into your accounts after we secured them? He was grasping at straws, his voice escalating with each word. I decided to end his pathetic performance. No, Cody, I wasn't hacked. There are no hackers. There is only you. The line went utterly still. I could hear his sharp, ragged intake of breath, the sound of a man who had just walked into a wall he didn't see. What are you talking about? He finally managed to stammer, the panic in his voice now curdling with a dawning horror. I'm talking about Vault Sync, I said, my voice dropping the grandmotherly pretense and adopting a tone of cold, hard authority. I'm talking about a $5,000 transfer you initiated from my savings account into your checking account at 2:15 p.m. last Monday. I'm talking about the brand new $3,000 8K television that your mother was so proud of you for buying with your overtime pay. The silence on the other end was absolute now, the heavy, dead silence of a trapped animal. How did you don't know how do I know how to read my own bank statements, Cody? I finished for him, my voice like ice. How do I know how to respond to a fraud alert? How do I know how to document theft? Your grandfather taught me how to build a circuit board in 1978. You truly believed I was some clueless old woman you could swindle with a cheap app and a few condescending words. You underestimated me at every turn. Graham, please. It was a stupid mistake. I can explain. I'll pay you back, he pleaded, his voice cracking and breaking, the voice of a boy, not a man. No, I said, my tone as final as a gavel strike. The time for explanations is over. You committed a felony. I contacted Citibank. I provided them with a mountain of evidence, and I reported the crime. The money in your account, my money, is now frozen, along with every other dime you had in there. You wanted to play a game with my financial security? Well, now you have no security at all. You wanted to teach me a lesson about modern finance? Consider this your graduation. I could hear a choked sob before he could stifle it. Please, Graham. You have to call them back. You have to undo it. I'll be kicked out of my apartment. That, I said, looking out at the sturdy, peaceful home Stanley and I had built with honest work and mutual respect, is what is known as a consequence. You thought I was a fool, Cody, but the only fool here was you. I ended the call and placed the phone on the small garden stool beside me. My hand was perfectly steady. My heart was calm. I felt a deep, abiding sense of order having been restored to my small corner of the universe. The silence of my home no longer felt like an absence, but like a fortress. The fallout, as I knew it would be, was immediate and messy. My daughter Sarah called me within the hour, her voice a torrent of hysterical sobs and accusations. Mom, what have you done? Cody is a complete wreck. He's locked out of his life. How could you be so cruel to your own grandson? I listened to her tirade without interruption, letting her vent her frantic, misdirected anger. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke calmly. Sarah, before you say another word, I want you to ask your son 2 questions. Ask him to show you the pay stubs for the overtime that bought his television. Then, ask him to explain the VaultSync application he secretly installed on my phone. The line went quiet. She had no answer, because she knew deep down that there was no good one. The bank's official investigation was, as Brenda had predicted, swift and conclusive. Faced with the digital trail, the timeline, and the photographic evidence, they ruled it an unambiguous case of fraud by a family member. They presented me with 2 paths forward. I could press formal criminal charges with the Fort Wayne Police Department, or I could sign a series of documents acknowledging the theft for their internal records, in which case the funds would be returned to me. As much as my anger burned, I did not want to see my grandson with a criminal record. My goal was a lesson, not a life sentence. I chose the latter. Citibank permanently closed Cody's account for fraudulent activity, a black mark that will follow him for years. And my $5,000 was wired back into my account. He had to endure the profound humiliation of returning his prized television to the store to get enough cash to live on. He had to go to his mother, tail between his legs, and beg for money to pay his rent and his bills. In a single, calculated move, he had lost his financial independence, his dignity, and my trust. Our relationship, as it was, is gone, replaced by a chasm of shame and resentment. He cannot look me in the eye, and my daughter and I now navigate a strained silence, her maternal instinct warring with the undeniable truth of her son's actions. But I do not regret my decision. I did not act out of malice. I acted out of principle. Stanley taught me to be competent, to be self-reliant, and to fiercely protect what we had spent a lifetime building together. I honored his legacy by refusing to be a docile victim. I have since had a lengthy meeting with my estate lawyer. My will has been significantly amended. Cody's once substantial inheritance has been completely redirected. A large portion will now establish a grant for a local nonprofit that teaches financial literacy and digital ethics to at-risk youth. The remainder will endow a scholarship at Purdue University for students in the cybersecurity program. My money, earned through decades of honest work, will now be used to foster the kind of intelligence, integrity, and security my own grandson so callously disregarded. He thought I was just a clueless old lady. He learned that I am the matriarch of this family, the guardian of my own legacy, and the absolute final authority on my own fortune. It was a brutal lesson, but one I am certain he will never, ever forget.